What's up, everybody? I'm just finishing up my, meal here. Give me a second. I'm gonna tell you. Today we're talking about nutrition. Spaghetti, one of my favorites. I do make it a little differently though than most people. But today we're talking about nutrition because welcome to Work Smarter, Not Harder, to cut confusion out of your diet. We don't need confusion. And the truth is, if we want to be happier, healthier, and hotter, and rock this new chapter of our life, we have to take into account nutrition, because this is how we fuel our body, right? I've been studying nutrition and physical fitness ever since I started popping out babies in 1999. And I've been all over the map with this stuff. And do you think that it helped me? It's like, no. Actually, as a result of so much information out there, I nearly destroyed my own metabolism. I threw my body's natural biorhythms completely out of whack. I developed eating disorders, and I really began to despise my own body. And I don't want that to happen to you. And if it is already happened, well, then you're in luck, because cutting the confusion out of your diet is one of the first things that I teach my clients, because it's the first step toward healing your relationship with your body and with food. So why are there at least 100 different kinds of diets? Why? I mean, is food really that hard that we need like 100 different kinds of fad diets? Why do some diets completely contradict other diets? You got low fat, low carb, high carb. Does it really have to be that confusing? I would like to suggest that no, it does not have to be that confusing. And in this video, we are going to discuss the basic building blocks of nutrition science. And then I'm going to teach you a trick that will help you explain 100 dietary theories in 10 minutes. Surprise! I'm not going to explain 100 dietary theories in 10 minutes. I'm going to teach you how to explain 100 dietary theories in 10 minutes, because I'm not here to teach you what to think, ladies. I'm here to teach you how to think. And because I love you, I'm providing you with a free resource that will help you do just that. So stick with me and we will learn how to explain 100 dietary theories in 10 minutes. But first, we have to start with the basic building blocks of nutrition science. Now, for some of you, this is going to be new information. For others, this might be a review, but ultimately we need to cover this information in order to understand the trick that's going to allow you to learn all of these dietary theories like that. Now, because here is the truth. Dietary theories are confusing, and they do contradict each other. And there are hundreds of them. And each one has multiple scientific studies to show why their diet is the best diet. Believe me, I'm a total nerd on this stuff. I've read many of those studies. But there is an awesome book, actually an awesome quote from a book by Dr. Mark Hyman. This is the book over here. What the Heck Should I Eat is the name of the book. And it's a great book, highly recommended. The quote goes like this. He says, "I've been studying nutrition science for 35 years, and even the experts are confused by the science. If the people we look to for nutritional guidance keep changing their views, no wonder that the rest of us are befuddled and mystified." So that pretty much says it, from the guy who such an expert that he wrote a book, What the Heck Should I Eat? Because let's face it, you've heard it all before. Eat vegan. We should eat paleo. We should eat soy. No, soy is terrible for you. Potatoes will make you fat. No, potatoes are good for you. They have resistant starch. You've got to count calories. No, calories don't actually matter. You've got to go raw. No, no, gluten-free. No, no, none of that actually matters at all. It's frustrating. You know, it's like you could spend so much time grueling over complicated and contradictory nutrition. And I did, and all of these dietary series, and you still wouldn't make any sense of it all. But I'd actually like to suggest that you don't have to. And actually, it's not really a particularly good use of your time or money to do that. A better use of your time is to back up and look at all of it from a bird's eye view. And when you look from a bird's eye view, you can see that there's a pattern at work. And that's the trick that I'm going to show you here today. We're going to take a really big step back and look at that bird's eye view by starting off with what is nutrition. Very basic. Simply said, nutrition is the process of taking in and assimilating nutrients from the foods that we eat, okay? Taking in and assimilating nutrients from the foods that we eat. And this is all necessary for the health and growth of our body. Now, there are many nutrients that are needed for energy. They're needed for the maintenance of our tissues. They're needed for the regulation of bodily processes. And those main nutrients are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. High level view here. I want to mention and discuss 3 in particular because they are referred to as macronutrients. And these are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They're called macronutrients because the body needs a large amount of these. They're unique because they're the only nutrients that provide your body with energy, which is measured in calories. Remember, calories are the building blocks of energy. So in addition, however, to macronutrients, there are also the micronutrients. And the micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals that the body only requires trace amounts of for proper functioning. So micronutrients don't contain calories. They don't necessarily provide the body with energy. However, they do help convert calorie-containing foods, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates into energy. So they're responsible for how we're able to convert the macronutrients. And so they play just a host of roles in functioning of a healthy body. So they are very important. We're just not going to go into them too much today, not in this video. But for the purposes of this lesson here and learning the trick on how to explain all of these dietary theories in 10 minutes, we're going to stick with and focus on macronutrients. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. So first one, what are carbohydrates? Well, carbohydrates are organic compounds that contain single, double, or multiple sugar units. Now, glycogen is the technical term, but let's just call them sugar, just simplify them a little bit. Now, your body looks to carbohydrates as pretty much its main energy source because carbs are broken down more easily in the body than any of the other macronutrients. So there are 3 types of carbohydrates. There's simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, and fiber. So let's take a quick look at each of those. So starting with the simple versus the complex. As you can imagine, the simple carbs have a simple chemical structure. They're only like 1 to 2 sugar units long. So little, very tiny little chemical structure. And because it's so simple, the body breaks down that sugar and metabolizes it really, really quickly. And generally, simple carbohydrates taste sweet. Complex carbohydrates, as you can imagine, have a complex chemical structure. So instead of 1 or 2 units long, the complex carbohydrates have, units that range from 3 to 1,000 units of sugar long, depending on what they are. So it makes sense that with more complex chemical structure, it takes more time for the digestive system to break that down. I wanted to mention, though, in a previous training, one where I discussed the blood sugar roller coaster, I talked about how to optimize your blood sugar and to use it for more energy, clarity, and self-control. And I go into greater detail about complex and simple carbs and what's good and what's bad. If you would like a link to that video, please feel free to drop the comment blood sugar roller coaster into the comment section, and then I will make sure to send you that link via messenger. Now, when it comes to complex carbohydrates, they're usually more savory as opposed to sweet, like starchy, like potatoes, versus carbohydrates that are sweeter, like fruits, which would be a more simple. But let's now talk a little bit about fiber. Now, this is the third kind of carbohydrate. Now, fiber can't be digested. It doesn't provide calories, but it does help your food move through your digestive tract, which is very, very important. And overall, the benefits of carbohydrates on your diet is that they are a key source of energy for your body. Your brain, your kidneys, your muscles, and your heart need carbohydrates to function properly. They help also with fat metabolism. And this is important because we can't metabolize our fats if we don't have a certain amount of carbs. And the fiber especially is really crucial for intestinal health and our microbiome health. So and I discussed, like I said before, I discussed what's best to eat and what's best to avoid in those other videos. But if you'd like to learn more about that, please do let me know. I'd be happy to send you a link. But for now, we're just going to look at the main information about what these things are, what these carbs are, and all of the other macronutrients. So let's move on to fats. Now, fats are substances that do not dissolve in water. They're called hydrophobic or water-fearing. And you've heard of the phrase, they go together like oil and water, because the truth is they don't. They don't go together because fats do not dissolve in water. And for a long, long time, for those of us who grew up in the 90s era, there was this sort of era of low-fat diets. And there was this whole thing about how, eating fat is going to make you fat, but that's actually turned around. People are realizing that fats are crucial for our survival. And now the trend is actually in the opposite direction, where some diets are like, eat a ton of fats, like keto. And we're going to talk more about that actually in a little bit. But ultimately, we do need fats. We need them for maintenance and protection of our cellular membranes. The membrane that surrounds the cell needs fats to function. They are also a high density energy source. Now, high density means that 1 gram of fat has 9 calories in it, as opposed to 1 gram of carbs, which has only 4 calories. So they're thicker and hardier and denser, which is why they're harder to digest. They also help us absorb fat-soluble vitamins, and they provide cushioning for the organs and the insulation in the body to make sure that everything is cushioned correctly in our body. They're also the raw materials for creating vitamin D and other hormones. Fats are important for hormone regulation. And they also, one of my favorite parts of it, they provide satiation. They provide satisfaction with our foods. They taste good. They provide consistency and stability to our foods. They make them taste good and they make them last in our stomach longer. Now, there's 3 types of fats. One is saturated fat. The second is unsaturated fat, and that includes monounsaturated fat, so MUFAs, you've heard of the term MUFA, and PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, and also it includes the omega-3s and 6s that our brain needs for development. The third kind of fat is trans fat. And again, I'm not going to go into the good, bad, and the ugly about fats in this video, but for now, all you have to know is that you can find fats in meats, poultries, nuts, seeds, dairy, butters, oils, fish, avocado. All of those places contain fats. Next, let's go on to the macronutrient, which is protein. Now, proteins are large and complex molecules that play a whole host of critical roles in our body. Now, on a cellular level, proteins make up or create sort of the blueprint that defines the different working organelles of a cell. I kid you not, proteins decide what a cell looks like, feels like, has inside of it, like the mitochondria and the ribosomes. Proteins, the amino acids that create proteins, create those cells. So proteins are required for structure, the function, the regulation of the body's tissues and organs. And proteins are made up of hundreds of small units called amino acids, which are sort of attached to each other in long chains that make up the proteins. Now, there are over 20 or so different types of amino acids that can be combined in different ways to make each type of protein. And, proteins are super important to our diet because they're used to produce new tissue for growth. They're used also to repair damaged tissue. And, proteins also define what an organism is, what it looks like I said, and what it's made of. And proteins make up the majority of the enzymes that are in our digestion and immunity in our microbiomes as well. Hormones, such as the human growth hormone and insulin, require amino acids to make up those proteins. And proteins might be also used as a source of energy if carbohydrates are not available. It's usually the secondary source of fuel for the body, and it likes to save proteins for growth and development and repair. And we could go into great detail about protein in this video, but we just want to talk at a very high level right now. We will get to some of that stuff in future videos, I promise. But for now, there are two places that proteins are found. There's animal-based proteins, and then there's vegetarian or vegan-based proteins. And it's important to learn those two things because they are different. And many of the dietary theories out there do discuss the differences. But let's do a quick recap before I teach you the trick. Are you ready? When it comes to how our body works, being able to feed it right, these are the main nutrients. We have the carbohydrates, the fats, the proteins, the vitamins, and the minerals. And, the three that we care the most about in this particular instance and how to explain these theories is the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So these are the macronutrients that we will be discussing, and these are the building blocks of energy. These are the things that give us calories. Now, this is a very basic concept of nutrition that I'm introducing at a very, very basic level so that you can understand the trick that I'm about to teach you as you learn how to explain 100 dietary theories in 10 minutes. Now, here's where I offer you that free resource. In the description, and I also put it into the comments section right before I jumped on the screen here, there's a handout that lists 100 of the most popular dietary theories, and I encourage you to download that handout, and then you can learn how to explain them in 10 minutes for yourself. It's really, honestly, not that hard. The link's in the description, and you can feel free to do that and follow along with me right now, or you can do that later, totally up to you. But the link will take you to a PDF document that you can download directly. But here is the trick, folks. You ready? All dietary theories simply shift the balance, the source, or the timing of these macronutrients. So the balance means the ratio of carbs to fats to proteins. The source means the kind of carbs and fats and proteins. And the timing refers to when to eat the carbs and fats and proteins. And let's look at this a little more in depth. So balance. Balance again means the ratio of carbs to fats to proteins. If you look at your whole daily calories, as a big pizza pie, and you carve that up into fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, moving around those different amounts and those different percentages is what this is about. You know, some diets are high carb, some are low carb, some are high protein, some are low protein. They're just moving these things around. So that's what I'm talking about in the balance of macronutrients. And we're going to look at some specific diets about that in just a moment. But first, let's look at source. Now, source refers to what kinds of carbs or proteins, meaning what kinds, how much is a particular dietary theory recommending. Now, some diets also have special cooking techniques. Now, it's not a ton, like, you know, there's the raw food diet or maybe the macrobiotic diet, but in most diets, there's really, you know, there's either no cooking or maybe certain type of cooking, but we'll get to that in a moment. I'll touch on that, why that's important here in a little bit. Next, let's look at timing. Timing refers to when do you want to eat the carbs, fats, or proteins, because diets have very specific recommendations for that. Some diets will have you eat no carbs at all for several days in a row and then cycle in carbs. It's called carb cycling. Others might say don't eat carbs at all ever. And others might say you should eat carbs at night before you go to bed, which does seem a little crazy. But actually, if you look at something like the serotonin power diet or the potatoes, not Prozac diet, they're trying to use eating carbs at night to stimulate the production of serotonin, because, you know, 90% of your serotonin is made in your microbiome, and they love carbs, those little guys down there. And then there are other diets that suggest that you only have carbs in the morning, actually, you know, so that you're burning them throughout the day because that's your primary fuel source. And you don't want to eat them at night when the body's about to go into rest and detox, because then you'll be up. It'll impede your ability to sleep. There's so many different things. You know, so what's the bottom line here that we're looking at? Well, the bottom line is that diets and dietary theories or nutritional strategies, whatever you want to call it, they're all either shifting the balance, the source, or the timing of fats, proteins, and carbs. It's almost like a big game of Tetris. That's why I put this screen on here. Big game of Tetris. Remember playing Tetris? You can move those little guys in lots of different ways, and they would all accomplish a lot of some of the same things along the bottom, and they would spew, and they would disappear. Loved Tetris. That's a lot like what this is. Now, there is one other variable that I mentioned, cooking techniques. Now, it's pretty minor, honestly. Not many diets really have much of a cooking techniques, but it's worth saying, because, you know, some diets do specify whether you should eat raw or cooked foods. And it mostly has to do with maybe the idea that either your food, like by cooking it, you're kind of pre-digesting it, and it can make it easier for your body to digest it. Or at the same time, some diets warn about cooking food because it might give you less of the vitamins. It might cook away some of the vitamins and minerals. Or some, you know, they do suggest you want to cook your food because it might actually decrease some of the toxins that are in certain like vegetables and things like that. For the most part, however, as you can see from the handout, most diets don't specify a difference in terms of cooking styles, but you can check all of that out for yourself, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about any of that as well. Okay. So let's actually look at some of those dietary theories to see how this nifty trick plays out. And if you haven't gotten a chance to, you can feel free to download that free resource right there in the description or the comments section and follow along, and you can take notes. There is a column, you know, why is this the right diet? Feel free, you know, but I left that column there so you guys can make that decision for yourself. But if you can't download it right now, no big deal. We're going to put a few of them on the screen and discuss them. Okay. So let's focus on starting off two of the more popular ones these days, paleo and vegan. Okay, these are two really popular ones these days. So let's start with the paleo diet. Now let's look at it based on how it recommends that you balance or source your macronutrients. You know, first of all, what is paleo? So let's start with that. Paleo is a diet that requires eating the types of foods that experts believe to be, I say experts in paleo, believe to be the only foods available or consumed by humans during the Paleolithic period. So that would be like the cave women. All the cave women, they were eating this stuff. And advocates of this diet believe that eating this way is really anti-inflammatory. And honestly, they're not wrong, because if you are eating this way, you're taking out so many processed foods and chemicals and all kinds of things. And so in that sense, it is kind of true. There is a lot of anti-inflammatory effects of the paleo diet. That being said, however, I am not saying you should eat paleo. That's not what this discussion is about. I'm just explaining the theory and why it might work. But in the paleo diet, you essentially remove all carbs except for non-starchy vegetables and fruit, and specifically in their raw, organic, natural form. They also want plenty of high quality fats and proteins, things that have not been processed, and they really recommend animal proteins like fish, meat, eggs. Those are recommended generally over plant protein sources, although I'm sure that there are some exceptions to that. And for those of you that are paleo fans, you'll be like, well, there's so much more detail to that. Yes, there is. But we're just looking at it as in a nutshell right now. The paleo diet is generally higher in animal-based proteins than plant-based proteins. And it's generally lower in carbohydrates because vegetables have a really low calorie count in general. You can't eat too much of them if you're just eating just vegetables. Now, let's look at the vegan diet. Now, the vegan diet is another sort of many-layered dietary theory. But we're going to look at it in a nutshell also, is the vegan diet is essentially where the individual abstains from eating any animal-based products whatsoever. And this might actually also extend to their lifestyle choices. They make sure that their clothing is not made out of animal products, or their shoes or their bath and their body things are not tested on animals. But for the vegan diet, carbs are allowed. In fact, they're even encouraged, because you're generally combining them to get adequate protein from your vegetable sources. And they include the grains and the quinoas, all of those more dense, complex carbohydrates. They encourage those. And fats, well, they want high quality fats. Proteins, they recommend, however, are plant-based proteins only. And keep in mind, this is a very simplistic description of the vegan diet, but in a nutshell, the vegan diet is completely the opposite of paleo. So paleo says less carbs because grains are not allowed, remember. So they tend to be less carbs, whereas the vegan has many carbs. Paleo says meat, fish, and eggs, whereas vegan says no animal products. And these are contradictory theories, but both have studies to back up why you should eat paleo, why you should eat vegan. And there are many, 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 many people that have gotten healthy doing so. So let's look at another diet. Let's add another diet into this because this is fun. Let's look at the keto diet. Now, this is a way of eating that forces our body to burn energy differently by decreasing carbs so far down to the point that the body needs and is forced to use fat and protein as its fuel sources. And when you minimize carbs down to a certain amount, your body goes into a state called ketosis, where it starts pumping out, more ketones is what they're called, and they help to convert fat and protein into fuel better. The problem is, once you eat a carb, then you're out of ketosis all over again. You got to start all over. And it takes many days to get into ketosis, so it's kind of a pain. I've been on this one many times. But the keto diet, for carbs, they actually recommend, any non-starchy vegetables, basically only green vegetables, really low carb vegetables. In terms of fats, they actually want you to be at like 60 to 75% fat. So you're eating a lot more fat because that's your primary energy source. And with proteins, they want you to keep between 20 to 35% of your daily calories, because and they don't really specify between animals or plant proteins, as long as you're getting some protein, because you do need protein for recovery. But let's compare this now to the paleo. While they both suggest low carb veggies and no grains, But keto uses fat as fuel. So the fat percentage is extremely high. Look at that, 70%. That is your eating of fat. Whereas in paleo, it's a little more balanced in terms of fat. The carbs, of course, are really, really low in the keto. And then, you know, a little more balanced in the paleo. They're not so rigid in paleo as how much to eat of things. They really mostly just suggest how to eat things. So their macros tend to be a little shifty, but for the most part, follow this general rule of thumb. With keto, you do want to keep down to 25% protein, not more than that, because otherwise your body will just be burning protein the whole time. You want it to burn fat when you're in the keto diet. So you actually want to limit your protein, but you do want to have it. Whereas paleo, you want a little more protein because it's going to fill you up. It's going to, you know, last in your body longer. They believe that this was the way that the cavemen ate. And apparently they were all super healthy. Take a deep breath there. Let's just breathe into that for a second, shall we? It's honestly no wonder that people are confused, because everybody is confused. You can see from the rest of the 100 dietary theories that they're all just playing a game, a shell game of nutrients. You know, some are high in fat, some are low in fat, some are high in animal protein, some are low, high in carbs, low in carbs. Where does the madness end? But there's good news. There's really good news about why we actually do want to know this stuff. First of all, I'm sharing this information with you so you don't have to go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars and countless years learning about all of these different dietary theories. That's good, right? You're welcome. Second of all, I really just want to help you clarify this information so that you may have known some of this. You may have known a lot of this actually, but when you hear it put in a new way, it makes a little more sense. And I'm hoping that it can help you decipher these things for yourself so that when you look at a diet, you can understand why it's working and how it's different from other diets. Now, the question is though, what is right for you? Everybody's different. Your body, your likes, your dislikes, your microbiome, your lifestyle, they all play a part in your optimum nutritional strategy. I would prefer the word nutritional strategy personally. And I encourage you to get curious and start to tap into your body's inner wisdom about what that is. When I first started my journey, I had been on so many diets that my hunger and fullness hormones were completely out of whack. Every time I ate food, my stress response was activated and was flooding my body with cortisol. And that's why the very first thing that I had to do was really map out everything, body, mind, and spirit, everything. And I had to strategize where to start. Now, when I work with my clients, I do make recommendations about balance, source, and timing of macronutrients. And that's, my recommendations are pretty generally like 80–90% accepted as healthy across the board. But I don't specify to them what to eat. I don't create diet plans or anything like that. I don't push any of these diets in this handout. I don't believe that it is my role to teach people what to eat. I want to teach women how to eat. I want to teach women how to think about the whole picture and to learn the ways to tap into their inner wisdom so that they can discern what is healthy and what is unhealthy for themselves. That's where the real value lies. And so, if you struggle with your relationship with food and have been on so many yo-yo diets that you also don't know where to start to repair the damage that they've done, I encourage you to set up a free breakthrough call. And I can help you dissect the big picture and strategize your next best step. It's a simple Zoom call that can get you at least moving in the right direction with your immediate next best steps. And before we go, I would like to hear from you. What ahas, insights, and appreciations do you have for this video today? Was there something that you learned that was new, perhaps? I'd love for you to drop a comment in the comment section. I really do love to hear from all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Noi. It rhymes with joy. And I hope this video brought you one step closer to having more joy in your body and in your life. Mahalo.